The midday sun hung high over the sprawling forward operating base, baking the rows of parked Black Hawk helicopters in shimmering waves of heat. The air tasted like dust and fuel, the kind of taste you could never quite wash out of your mouth. A few mechanics shuffled between aircraft, wiping sweat from their brows, tools in hand. It was the rhythm of maintenance, the unseen work that kept the birds flying. At the far end of the flight line, tucked between two faded hangars, a lone woman crouched beside one of the UH-60 Black Hawks. Her hands moved with quiet precision, attaching the fuel hose, checking the coupling twice, then glancing at the gauges. Her name tag was missing. Her uniform was clean but plain. No unit patch, no rank insignia. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't joke with the crew chiefs, didn't even glance at the pilots who walked past. And so, she blended into the background, just another refueling tech doing her job. But then, from across the tarmac, the base commander approached, his boots clicking sharply against the concrete. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair, the kind of officer who carried himself with quiet authority. He was mid-conversation with another officer when he stopped. Completely. His head tilted slightly, his brow furrowed. The woman didn't notice him. She reached to shut off the pump, and when she did, she muttered something under her breath. Just a few words. The commander's expression changed instantly. His lips parted, his shoulders stiffened, his eyes locked on her, unblinking. It wasn't what she said, it was her voice. He took a single step closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. She turned her head slightly, just enough for the sunlight to catch her profile. A sharp cheekbone, a faint scar tracing the edge of her jaw. She froze for half a heartbeat when she noticed him watching her. Then she went back to coiling the fuel hose, deliberately, like nothing had happened. But for the commander, everything had happened. His mind was racing. That voice, that face, that scar, the sound of it had carried him back to a night most people at this base had never heard about. A night that wasn't in any official briefing, a mission that had no public record. He remembered the static of a comms headset, the chaos of overlapping voices, the desperate call of a team pinned down behind enemy lines. And above it all, he remembered her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Calm, steady, deadly certain. The woman in front of him, the one refueling a helicopter as if it was the only thing she'd ever done, was supposed to be gone. He'd attended the memorial. He'd stood in formation as her name was read aloud. He'd seen the folded flag handed to a man who was supposed to be her brother. Yet here she was. The commander's throat tightened. He took another step forward, his shadow falling over her boots. She finally straightened, fuel hose in hand, and looked up at him. Her eyes were a startling pale gray, the kind of color you only noticed if you were close enough to feel the chill of them. "Ma'am," he managed, though his voice caught on the word. Where did you serve before this?" She tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at one corner of her mouth. It wasn't warm. "Here and there," she said simply. Her voice was the same, low, unhurried. As if she had all the time in the world, the commander's pulse thudded in his ears. "Your name?" The woman coiled the last loop of the hose, set it neatly in place, and finally met his gaze fully. "You can call me the refueler," she said. And then, and as if nothing had happened, she stepped past him, her boots crunching over the gravel, and disappeared into the shadows of the hangar. The other officer standing nearby looked between them, confused. "Sir, do you know her?" The commander didn't answer right away. He was staring at the hangar door where she'd vanished, replaying her voice in his mind. "Yes," he said finally, though his voice was quieter now, almost to himself. "I thought I did, but she's not supposed to be here." The officer frowned. "What do you mean?" The commander's eyes narrowed. "I mean she died 8 years ago." The commander didn't sleep that night. Long after the base had gone quiet, after the last helicopter blades had stopped spinning, and the night watch settled into its slow, watchful rhythm, he sat alone in his office. The desk lamp cast a pool of yellow light over the scattered folders in front of him, but he wasn't reading. He was listening to the echo of her voice in his head. It had been 8 years since the mission in the Naruk Valley. 8 years since the rescue operation that had gone wrong before it even began. She'd been the voice guiding them in from an invisible overwatch position, calling out enemy movements, warning of traps before they could walk into them. Every word she spoke over the radio had been laced with a quiet certainty, the kind you only get from someone who'd seen more than her share of firefights and survived them. When the team got pinned down, she didn't hesitate. She broke cover. She ran toward the sound of the gunfire. The last anyone saw of her was in the grainy feed from a helmet cam, her silhouette framed against the flare of tracer rounds, one hand steadying a wounded man, the other firing without pause. And then the feed cut. Hours later, they found nothing. No body, no gear, just blood in the dirt and the burned-out shell of a hillside hide. Intel confirmed heavy enemy presence in the area. They called it. She was gone. The commander had carried the weight of that call for years, and now she was here, alive, refueling helicopters like the past had never happened. He should have confronted her immediately, demanded answers, filed a report. But the truth was, he was afraid of what she might say. The next day he went to the hangar early. She was already there. Same uniform, same unmarked sleeves. She was checking the fuel lines on another Black Hawk, humming softly under her breath. A tune he almost recognized but couldn't place. He stepped closer. "We need to talk." She didn't look up. "About what, sir?" "You know exactly what." Finally, she turned toward him. Her pale gray eyes studied him with an unreadable calm. "Do I?" "You're supposed to be dead." His voice cracked on the last word, though he hated himself for it. Her gaze held his for a long, slow moment. Then she set down her wrench, wiped her hands on a rag, and said, "Supposed to be? That doesn't always mean much out here." He took a step closer. "Why? Why disappear? Why let us bury an empty box?" Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, not quite sorrow. "Because sometimes," she said quietly, "the mission doesn't end when the orders do. Sometimes you keep going, even when no one's supposed to know you're still in the fight." The commander felt the air in the hangar grow heavier, as if her words carried weight beyond what she was telling him. "I heard your voice," he said more softly now. "Back then. I remember the last thing you said over comms. You told me, stay low, don't stop." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. "And you didn't stop. That's why you're here now." The silence between them stretched. "You could have come back," he said finally. "I couldn't," she replied, "not without putting people in danger. And not without undoing what had to be done." There was something in her tone, something that made the commander's skin prickle. He wanted to ask who she'd been working for all this time, what she'd been doing, why she'd chosen this base, this moment to reappear. But before he could speak, a loud alarm blared across the tarmac. A voice crackled over the PA. "All crews, scramble, scramble!" She grabbed her gloves and started toward the flight line without waiting for him. "Where are you going?" he called after her. She glanced back over her shoulder. "To finish something I started a long time ago." And then she was gone again, her boots pounding across the concrete, her figure disappearing into the chaos of rushing crews and spinning rotor blades. The commander stood frozen for a moment, the roar of engines building in his ears. Deep down, he knew, whatever was about to happen, it was tied to her. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The scramble turned the base into a storm of motion. Crews dashed between aircraft, pilots vaulted into cockpits, engines roared to life one by one. The commander pushed through the chaos, scanning the flight line for her. He found her near the end, strapping herself into the gunner's seat of a Black Hawk that had just spun up. The pilot leaned out of the cockpit window, clearly unsure of who she was, but before he could say anything, the commander's voice cut through the din. "Let her go," he barked. The pilot hesitated, then nodded. Whatever this was, the commander had just authorized it. The helicopter lifted off in a spray of dust, rotor blades thundering overhead. The commander stood there, eyes locked on the rising bird, until it disappeared over the ridge. For the next hour, the radio was a mix of clipped calls, bursts of static, and the distant thump of gunfire carried over the hills. He caught her voice twice, once calling coordinates with surgical precision, once telling someone to hold your fire until you see the white scarf. Both times, the sound sent a shiver down his spine. Then silence. The Black Hawk returned just before sunset. It came in low, dipping slightly to one side as if carrying extra weight. When it touched down, medics swarmed it. 2 wounded soldiers were pulled out, both alive. And then she stepped down, calm, composed, like she'd just finished a routine shift. The commander moved to meet her. Up close, he could see a thin smear of dust across her cheek and a fresh tear in her sleeve where a bullet had grazed her. "They were pinned down," she said before he could ask. "Same valley, same story. Not this time." He stared at her, searching for words. Finally, "You didn't have to go." "Yes, I did," she said simply. "I told you, the mission wasn't finished." They stood there as the sun sank behind the mountains, the sky bleeding orange into deep purple. "You're not going to tell me everything, are you?" he asked. She gave the faintest of smiles. "No, but I'll tell you this. The people we lose, they're never really gone. Not if what they fought for is still alive. Sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to do the work they didn't get to finish." The commander felt something loosen in his chest, a weight he hadn't realized he'd carried since the day he thought she'd died. "You're not staying, are you?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "Places to be, people to find. You know how it is." He almost smiled. "Will I ever see you again?" Her eyes lingered on his, and for just a moment, he saw the ghost of the soldier she used to be. Fierce, unyielding, unafraid. "Maybe," she said, "if the mission calls for it." And with that, she turned and walked toward the setting sun, her silhouette growing smaller against the horizon until the desert swallowed her whole. The commander stood there long after she was gone, the hum of the bass fading into the background. He thought about the strange way life bends time, how a single voice, heard again after years, can tear open the past and rewrite the present. He thought about the soldiers still out there, the ones who might never come home, and the quiet work that keeps their fight alive. And he understood something he hadn't before. Honor isn't just about medals, ceremonies, or folded flags. It's about the unseen moments, the choices made in shadows, the missions no one will ever read about, the voices that guide us when we're lost, even the ones we thought were gone forever. That night, he went back to his office. He pulled her file from the archive, the one stamped "deceased" in thick black ink. He slipped it into a drawer and locked it away. Some things, he decided, were better left off the record, because sometimes the greatest service isn't in being remembered. It's in never being known at all.